has made it more challenging. Pre-COVID, our last figure was 94.6%, which was the best ever. This year it was 92.8%. And that's very much a COVID impact and a reduction in employment opportunity for young people. So it's more challenging, but it doesn't change the target. And I'll tell you why. I do not want any young person to leave a Glasgow school to unemployment. If we settle for less than 100%, so let's say we made the target 95%. Well, if you make the target 95%, you are saying that over 200 of our school leavers would leave to unemployment. And I don't think that is a target for us. I do not believe, and the whole team do not believe, that having spent between 13 to 15 years in the education system, that you should leave to unemployment. So that's why it's 100% positive destinations. And we are not going to relax or stop until we get to that. And I firmly believe that we will. And I'm not put off by COVID. I'm not delaying it because of COVID. I believe it's the right target. I believe it's the right time frame, and we're pushing towards it. How do we get to that? Well, we have to ensure that regardless of what school you go to in our city, that young people experience the entitlement of the careers education and the work placement standard. And we're going to talk a bit about the careers education standard later on and what those entitlements are. And the work placement standard is basically about getting work experience, getting out to workplace learning, and we're looking to deliver all of that. And it shouldn't make a difference what school you're in. There's a clear entitlement. There's a kind of bar that we set, and we want to work with all our schools to make sure that we're all above that bar. And that's about developing our young people to be employable, to know what it takes to get into employment, to have those skills and those qualities and that knowledge so that they then leave school to those destinations. So that's what the strategy is driven by. Thanks, Jane. So how do we actually think we can do it? Well, we have some activity which I would say is not in place in all of our schools at the moment, but we are working towards putting it in place. Much of it is in place, but it's not all in place, and it's not all in place as much as we would like it to be. And we're all working together on an improvement journey around that. And the first bit is that in every classroom, whether that's in a nursery, a primary or a secondary school, the teachers are linking what's happening, are linking the learning to that employability agenda, that landscape, where they're saying, how would you use this in work? How will this help you as you leave school? Where could you see yourself using these skills? So Jane's been doing a whole load of work with primary teachers around that, and that's really important, and I'll talk to that later. We had a training programme for all secondary teachers planned. It's been delayed a bit because of COVID, but we want that going right the way through. We then want to focus on how young people develop skills, because employers tell us that, yes, they're interested in qualifications, but they are much more interested in the skills that young people can bring to their organisations. And Jane's going to talk about meta skills. Career management skills are about that ability to manage your own pathway. So as distinct from when I left school 15 years or so ago, if you believe that, you'll believe anything. You left school and you went to one job and you stayed in it. I left, went to teacher training, and I've been a teacher ever since, and lots of people did that. Now, the generation of young people in our schools don't have that experience. They will have 5, 6, 7, 8 jobs in their time. So they need to be able to manage all of that. They need to be flexible and adaptable, and we'll come back to that. So it's not just about giving them advice, it's about helping them take control of their own pathways and their own ambitions and know how to manage that. Vitally important is that careers information, the advice that they get and the guidance that they're given. And that comes from a whole range of sources, some of whom are in schools, some of them are in partners like Skills Development Scotland, partners like local organisations. But probably the most important career information, advice and guidance they get comes from their parents and their families. And that was certainly some of the most important advice I got. So it's very important that we all see that. But the right guidance, the right information is critical to young people making the right decisions and going in the right directions. Every year, labour market information is published, and we want to use that labour market information to guide what we offer young people. And what labour market information is basically, these are where the jobs are. These are the employment areas where there is growth, where there's the biggest level of opportunity and the biggest range of opportunity. And that changes every year. And we want our schools to know that. We want our parents to know about that so that we can guide young people to opportunities where they're going to have employment vacancies. One of the things that fascinated me when I took this job was the number of fantastic vacancies that employers could not fill, including our own council, who had 20 vacancies for administration, and they could not get young people to take them. A 4-year apprenticeship with the council, and they couldn't get them filled. Why is that? What's that about? We need our young people to know where those areas are. I need all you to know that, so that in your conversations with your children, you can try to say to them, look, that's where the chances are, while not taking away from, their real dreams and their real hopes. We need to partner with business. Business are our employers. So we want our employers in our schools working with our young people and doing more than just giving talks. I've said this to business all along. If you think coming along to a school and doing an assembly on a Tuesday morning to second year is going to make anybody want to work for you, then you're wrong. It doesn't. 10 minutes after it, they've already moved on. So we want them in our schools. We want work placement. We want work-based learning. And actually, one of the things that will come out of COVID is that there is now virtual work placement. There is placement that they can do online with lots of fantastic projects. And we're also developing bridges to employment, because what we're saying to business is, can you work with our schools? And if you work with our young people, at the end of it, because you've worked with them and because you know them, well, you give them a job, because we want that journey for them. And then destination support the applications, getting ready for interview, whatever's required, we'll do that to support our young people into those destinations. Thanks, Jane. So how are we doing that? So we now, through the Young Person Guarantee, which is a whole other presentation, we will now have a dedicated post in every secondary school. We have Skills Development Scotland careers advisors in every secondary school. As you can see, and I've already said, and Jane's going to talk about that, we're doing a whole load of training with our teachers so they know about Towards Better Futures and their role in it. There is a dedicated website called My World of Work that young people log into, and you can get into to get loads of advice and information. We've really been totally driven in terms of getting more young people the opportunity to go to university. And that's not so much about saying the best thing to do is university, but we don't want anyone to think that they can't go to university if they want to. Everyone can, if it's the right thing for you. So we've got things like the Glasgow University Top-Up Programme, visits to universities, we support with application and interview, and summer schools. Goes back to that labour market information, and that should affect course choices. So we want schools to share with our young people, these are where the opportunities are. So when you're choosing your courses, choose courses that will get you into these areas. When you're thinking about your future, think about places where you will get a job. One of the fascinating things for me actually is lots of young people are told where these areas are, but they still say, well, it's fine, I still want to do that. And there's lots of things that young people are doing where there is no opportunity. A couple of years ago, there were over 200 courses in sports science across Scotland, and there was one sports scientist employed in the whole country. Sports science is fabulous, but we want opportunity beyond it. But it should be linked to, so how do you make the connection to say, there's all the places where there's work, let's get our young people to want to work there. You know, we have had the experience of saying to young people, okay, look at a fantastic opportunity in, you know, climate activity or environmental work. Oh, I saw that sounds absolutely brilliant. I still want to be a plumber though. All right, okay, fine. No any jobs as a plumber at the moment, but so we need to try to make that link. We need our partners to help us with that, and that's the ones I've already spoken to you about. And within that 4,200, when I started this, there were 430 who were unemployed. We profiled every single one of them so we could understand why are they unemployed, what are the issues there, and we now have targeted support for those young people who are at risk of not getting anything. And we talk to them about, well, what do you want to do? What stopped me from doing that? What if we set up a programme for you? And we now have something called Towards Better Futures Next Steps, which is a series of programmes for young people at risk. Thanks, Jane. Just move on. So, the big message from me is that you guys are the most important. We can do all we want, but you can make the difference. So, what are you entitled to? So the Career Management Standard says that you get given all the information to talk to your child about careers, and it is never too early to start. Research has told us that if a child has not had their horizons widened by the age of 10, they are never widened. So we need to start early. You should be able to have discussion about your child's career and the right pathways for them with teachers and with staff in school and some of those new people we've put in. You should be able to request a discussion with a career advisor with your child when they're making course choices. Get into My World of Work and have that ongoing access to careers advisors and what are career management skills and how do you support your child with them. So what am I asking you to do? You stay aware of all the opportunities that are out there. My dad's advice to me was, and I hold on to this day, my dad was what back in the day was called a corporate plumber. He worked for the council as a plumber. And his only advice to me ever was, son, I don't care what you do, just don't be a plumber. And then just helped me apart from that. But 21st century, we need to know all the opportunities. Know those growth areas at the moment, their administration, their health and social care, their STEM. The NHS is a massive employer with massive vacancies that they can't fill. So how do we do that? What can you do there? Always encourage your child's ambitions and hopes and talk to them about what they need to do to achieve them. And remember, there's a bit of courage in there and there's some challenges in there. So let's not limit them because they're a girl or because they're a boy. Let's say to them, look, it doesn't matter. You can do anything you want. Let's not get drawn into that girls' careers, boys' careers stuff. Really important. That comes from you guys. If they've got a dream, help them to go for it. But, you know, make sure there's a wee reality check in there. I'll tell you why. I had a girl in one of my schools and she said to me, sir, I want to be a doctor. That's fantastic. I said, is there any issues? She says, sir, I don't really like blood very much. And I said, well, maybe we have to have a wee think about that, what you want to do. The situation's changing all the time, so foundation apprenticeships are fantastic. They can be done in school, work-based learning. Some brilliant graduate apprentices. And I did have an issue when I was head teacher. I was head teacher at 2 secondary schools in Glasgow. And I had 3 fantastic graduate apprentices. where young people who wanted to be accountants could go to a massive company, train with that company, get their degree and be paid while they're doing it. And I could not convince a parent to let their child do it because they all said, no, I want me to go to university. They went to university as part of graduate apprenticeship. So what are those things? And what are the new jobs? What are the things that don't exist at the moment? Encourage their skills, encourage them that flexibility so that they can change all the time and look at new things and work with that, and always support ambition, always encourage their dreams. And if they change it, fine, they will change it. Encourage that as well. And to support their schools. When we run events, come to them. If you've got skills and networks of your own through your own work, offer them to your school or offer them to me, and I'll get them out to other schools. And if you can give opportunity, give opportunity. We had a big challenge when I was head teacher at St Andrews in getting work experience for young people who wanted to do medicine. One of our parents was a practice manager in a GP firm, a GP practice. She sorted it for us. She gave all the kids work experience, job done, just through a parent. So those are the kind of things that I need from you, our strategy needs from you, and actually towards better futures is for all of us, and we all need to do our bit. So I'll hand over to Jane now, who'll talk about what we've been doing in primary schools.
Okay, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, thanks. Firstly, thank you for the opportunity to come along and speak to you this evening and for giving up an evening to tune in. You'll see lots of pictures and images on my slides going forward. Apologies, but once a primary teacher, always a primary teacher. I've been in this role for almost 2 years, having been a primary head teacher in Glasgow for 17 years. And I've called this part of the presentation Start Them Young, as it's never too early to start introducing the world of work, and it's all around us. Curriculum for Excellence, which you'll all be familiar with, has 6 entitlements which should be delivered for Scotland's children and young people through our curriculum. This is not new, and it's been around for as long as Curriculum for Excellence. I've highlighted in green the relevant ones, namely developing skills for learning, skills for life, skills for work, and support in moving into positive, sustained destinations beyond school, which is what Gerry's been talking to you about. Developing young workforce is one of Scotland's national priorities, and it's not just a Glasgow priority. So that improvement in employability skills and sustained positive school leaver destinations for all young people that Gerry has been talking about and that we aspire to in Glasgow. So he's outlined this as our employability strategy towards better futures in order to work towards this national priority and to benefit Glasgow's children and young people. Curriculum for Excellence is one of the 3 main building blocks, along with developing the young workforce and getting it right for every child. These will be phrases you'll be familiar with. And these 3 areas underpin Scotland's offer for children and young people. If you're a child born and brought up in Scotland, these are the frameworks in order to support and develop and prepare the children and young people for their futures. The Curriculum for Excellence refresh narrative shares these key messages from each of the 3 building blocks in order to meet the needs of all children and young people. And you can access this online, the refresh narrative, should you want to read about that a bit more and look into that. So this Career Education Standard that Gerry's already outlined, and he's been referred to, there's these entitlements. So he's spoken a bit about what you can do, and I would say in the primary school, Gerry's already shared with you that if children have already kind of made their mind up what their limitations are by age 10, it's very hard to change their mind. So this most important aspect are these entitlements within the Career Education Standard. And the whole idea is that these are meant to be delivered in partnership between teachers, Skills Development Scotland, parents and employers. And that's why it's so important we engage with parents at a very early stage. So what can you do? Well, as Gerry said, we would ask you to engage with the school and turn up at events virtually or in person once we're allowed to do that. And as Gerry said, offer your services and skills to support events. Speak to your children about their strengths and their area for developments, their likes and their dislikes, and their hopes and dreams for the future. And as Gerry said, that might change. Show interest and help them to research the jobs and careers that they're interested in. Within the Career Education Standard, there are illustrative statements, and they're not exhaustive, and they can be used by partners, teachers, parents, and employers to support the development of this approach to career education. So you'll see the following statements on the screen in front of you. And we call these Icann Statements. Now, if you read these will not be any surprise to you. that in early years or in primary one, that young people would be role-playing different job roles, talking about and following routines in the classroom, believing they can do any job. So these are the expectations that we would have in order to meet the career education standard in early years and in primary one. The Icann statements move on, and you can see in these statements can be used also for a basis of dialogue with the children and to agree what success could look like. You can see by reading through these that although home learning has maybe been tough, many parents, you have had to juggle this alongside working from home. So maybe one silver lining may be that your children and young people may now be more aware of your job and the skills required as they've seen, heard and watched you work. As we look at these first level statements, you can begin to see a progression in that children should be beginning to link with employers, learn more about the world of work and begin to profile themselves and participate in enterprise activity throughout primary 2, primary 3 and primary 4. As we progress on to second level, from primary 5 to 7, you can begin to see that the importance and relevance of skills becomes more apparent, and that children should be provided with opportunities to use online tools to profile their developing skills. And as Gerry alluded to earlier, that can be done via My World of Work, where there's a skills builder profile tool. During the pandemic, there's been a real emphasis on the importance of our skilled workforce and how we have all depended on them to survive, from NHS workers to supermarket workers to delivery drivers and to teachers. The term key workers is now commonplace and has provided opportunities to learn about the jobs on the front line and the skills that they require. So it's actually provided lots of opportunities to discuss the world of work and this term key workers and frontline workers. When you move into secondary school, again, you can see progression in the development for those young people in S1 to 3 and the broad general education. So now it's starting to speak about young people demonstrating their skills and being able to identify their interests, strengths and skills and use them to make these choices. Progressing further into the senior phase, you can see how we are supporting our young people towards securing a sustained positive destination. So it's really important that you're aware of what we're trying to achieve. And as Gerry said, we are working on embedding this across Glasgow. In some schools, it's being very well done, and in other schools where they're starting to work with these. I would like to give you an example. I was very privileged to be the head teacher in Pirrie Park Primary School in Govan from when it opened until 2 years ago. And this is an example where we focused on building up strong partnerships within the local community with a range of partners, businesses and employers and parents. This impacted really positively on learning and teaching and introduced all of our children and young people to the world of work. So we're encouraging our schools to look around them, to look towards parents and to make links and build better partnerships to benefit learners. These links were then utilised and threaded throughout the curriculum, so that when children were learning knowledge and skills, the world of work was naturally woven throughout a curriculum which was made to foster the school values and positive attitudes about the community in which they lived. It's not a bolt-on. Towards better futures and developing young workforce is not something we want to add on to the existing curriculum. It should be threaded through what we do within a real life context, as that is how our youngest people learn best, in a context. When children leave primary school in 2 years, they'll be asked to choose subjects. And I think it's really important that they're aware of what's ahead of them. You'll find that many of your schools just now are currently refreshing their curriculum rationale in light of the refresh narrative of CFE and the impact of the pandemic too. And this may be an area that you as parents will be consulted upon and asked to contribute to your views on. So I would urge you to please and encourage you to engage with the school on their curriculum if you're asked to do so. As I've said, when children leave school, they are asked to primary school. In 2 years' time, they'll be asked to choose subjects. And I know as a parent myself how stressful this can be for young people. And it's really important that we introduce subjects to children at an earlier stage so that children are aware of what is ahead of them, and that for certain jobs or courses, they'll need certain subjects. And these are the kind of posters you might usually see in a secondary school. We need to begin these conversations earlier. And I'll just let you see what these posters look like. So what we've done is we've managed to get hard copies of these posters into primaries and secondary schools. And there's 3 subject areas missing: PE, RME and technology have still to come. But what these posters illustrate is the different jobs associated with different subjects. And when we started to look at this, certainly in Piri Park, we were aware that our young people in primary 6 and 7 weren't aware of the different subjects that were going to be on offer to them in school. And what was really interesting was, I can give you an example of a primary 7 teacher who spoke to the children about him not working very hard at maths, not taking maths as a subject, because he wasn't aware and nobody had made him aware that if he wanted to be a primary teacher that he would need maths. So he had to go back to college at night and do his maths so that he could actually go forward and be a teacher, and an outstanding teacher at that. But if our children don't know this kind of information at an early stage, then it might be, you know, it might be the incentive to make them work a bit harder at certain subjects. These are really useful posters that are in all of our schools. In addition to this, it's so important our children learn about real people and real jobs, with a focus on the rewards that a job brings and the skills that are used in each job. So these posters here focus on the various pathways towards employment, and also the No Wrong Path campaign, especially around exam results time, as again, this can be a huge source of stress for young people regarding achieving the results required. So these posters you'll see in front of you are real people in real jobs, and we've worked very closely with Skills Development Scotland to get these attractive posters made that our young people can use to learn with. And the posters share what rewards these jobs bring, what skills they use, and also the career journey that people have taken to these. They are of real people. We worked very closely with the Equalities Officer last year to make sure that our BAME people who work in schools were properly recognised and identified, because for a city as diverse as Glasgow, we don't have enough BAME people working in education, and it's something that we were really, you know, encouraging and trying to recruit. We've developed a meta skills resource, as Gerry said, which I'll tell you about in a wee while, and these make great use of these posters. So we want our young people to meet and talk about real people in real jobs and what those rewards those jobs bring. You'll see in front of you an example of a fantastic wall display in Ibrox Primary School. The children in primary 6 had participated in what we call the primary engagement programme. And these are the career paths of how they'll get there, by either going straight to work, to college, an apprenticeship, or to university. Our children and young people really, really need to know themselves, their strengths, their horizons and networks. And I felt as if when children left primary 7, if they knew themselves and they knew what they liked and they didn't like, and they knew what areas they were strong in, then that was a real positive. And these are what Gerry was speaking about earlier, the career management skills. And really importantly, young people need to know what they like, because if young people, we know that if young people pursue something that they enjoy, then they have a better chance of living a happy and fulfilled life, hopefully. We all know the importance of mental and emotional health and well-being, and I'm sure that we all want healthy lives for our children and young people. And I know that when times are tough and when things are challenging, if you don't enjoy what you're doing, then it can make life very hard. So it's important that our young people go forward and pick something that they're going to. I'm not saying every day of your job is all flowers and birds and singing, but it's to make sure that our young people live happy, fulfilled lives. So thinking about the primary engagement programme, these are lessons that are taught in primary 6 and 7. And we launched the primary engagement programme, which was developed in collaboration with the University of Glasgow Widening Access and with Skills Development Scotland. We hope that by teaching these lessons in primary 6 and 7, our young people will be really aware of all the different routes they can take into whatever they wish, what their hopes and dreams are for the future. It was piloted in schools very successfully. So this went out just before we went into the first lockdown, but schools have hard copies of this programme. It's available on the My World of Work website, and we'll be doing some work with our primary schools to ensure that that's been implemented. You can see in front of you, last January when we launched this, there was 4 pupils from Ibrox Primary School who spoke about what they'd experienced, and we launched that very successfully. And it was amazing to hear the young people talk. So one of the young people spoke about he didn't realise that you could go to university because he thought only rich and posh people went to university. Another one of the young girls who spoke very confidently about her desire to become a lawyer. She knew exactly what subjects to take, exactly what route she was going down. And it was just wonderful to hear the impact of that programme and how positive it could be. So that's a super programme that will be being taught to primary 6 and 7 pupils. When having these discussions with children, understand, as Gerry said earlier, that their ambitions will change. Some may stay and some may be the same. I didn't always want to become a teacher. I wanted to be a doctor. And it's funny that Gerry spoke about the young pupil in his care who said she wanted to be a doctor, but she didn't like blood. Well, I wanted to be a doctor, but I had a terrible fear of needles. So I suppose there's something in there. The pandemic has made us focus really closely on the role of key workers, and there's been a lot of work in schools, even during lockdown, about what the role of key workers are and the kind of skills and what their job involves. So it's been really fantastic to see that despite us being in lockdown, despite the pandemic, the work in DYW and Towards Better Futures has continued in our schools. As an example, here in St Timothy's Primary School, Primary 1 children, when they came back in the summer and started school, they've already started to think of their future. So age 5, starting to think of what they're going to do to change the world and what they want to be when they grow up. So it's really important, and we want to start them young. And then as they progress, you'll see some of the pupils there from St Timothy's Primary Schools. It's one of my link schools who've done a lot of work with their primary 6 and 7 children, who we want to help our children turn their hopes and dreams and aspirations into reality. And they've been learning about the various learner pathways through the primary engagement programme. They also are now more aware of what subjects are available in secondary school and what subjects lead or link to those jobs and careers. So it's wonderful to see. You can see they've used their iPads and they've used different digital skills to show themselves and project themselves into that role in the future, which is just super to see. Gerry said I would speak about meta skills. These are the skills that employers have identified they need young people to have in the workplace. Since September, we've been working on a meta skills resource to support learners, and this is currently being piloted in several pioneer schools across the city. Obviously, the second lockdown in January hasn't allowed these to be used in the classroom as we'd intended, but some of our people who are piloting this just now have been using it remotely with their young people. Once we receive some feedback on this resource, we aim to launch this across all schools in Glasgow. And it's about children and young people being able to take part in a range of activities, including what you see in front of you is called a meta skills wheel, where children can reflect on their developing skills from 3 right through to 18. And children can start to profile how good they are at certain things and where they've got gaps and where they maybe need to develop their skills. And we'd hope that in the long run, it means that when young people can start to define their own skills more clearly and they are more aware of how they can demonstrate these skills, then when they go to apply for jobs or go for interviews for jobs or fill out application forms or even apply to college or university, that when they're asked to speak about their skills, they'll be much better at doing that and much more confident in doing that. And we as educators and as parents and employers, we need to increase the value that society places on these skills. So making connections to the world of work and highlighting the many jobs and careers available. I would ask that you highlight with your children and young people anytime visiting the bank, visiting a garage, going to shops, going to the supermarket, a trip to the pharmacy, trip to the optician, dentist, doctor, hospital, all the things we do in commonplace, even travelling in a car, a taxi, a bus or a train, or as you're out and about noticing people at work in construction, transport, parks, whatever. Make sure you talk to your children about what these people are doing and the jobs they're doing. This will raise your child's awareness of all the various jobs. And when you play dress up with children, quite often it's really important that we don't just think of jobs in the NHS as being a doctor or a nurse. There are hundreds, literally hundreds of different jobs that children can do. So from final thoughts as we wrap up, Towards Better Futures is not simply career education in the primary school. What Towards Better Futures is linking all learning activities to the world of work. And as Gerry and I have both emphasised, making best use of partnerships and you as parents and employers in Skills Development Scotland, and having that relentless focus on raising attainment and achievement and building those positive relationships and leadership values and skills in our children and young people so they can go on to a positive future. Make sure your children are aware of work at every opportunity, make those connections. And perhaps you won't do that all of the time. Encourage your children to ask lots of questions of people at their work, what they like about their job and perhaps what they don't like about their job and what their job involves. And utilise family members and friends who have different jobs, as Gerry said, and encourage them to speak about their jobs and their careers and what they don't like and what they like. And we all need to have the highest expectation and aspirations of every child, and hopefully create confident individuals who are successful learners, effective contributors and responsible citizens. Does that sound familiar? Well, that's what we're all about. So finally, Gerry and my contact details are in front of you. We've also got a Towards Better Futures Twitter account, so we would urge you to follow us and see what's there, and it might be quite interesting for you to see the type of activity going on. So that's me finished the presentation, and I will just stop sharing my screen.
Thanks, Jane. That's so much information there. Can I just say as well, before anybody asks, because I was going to ask the question, but while I was sitting here listening, I found them. If you want to see those posters that Jane showed in more detail, I've actually found the links on DYW and My World of Work, because I was actually going to ask that question, but I managed to find them on the site. So what I'll do, in case anybody wanted to kind of look at them in more detail, I thought they looked really helpful. I'll include the links into the YouTube description when I put the video up there. I'll put the links to the posters underneath it, just in case anybody wanted to kind of have a flick through them and read them, because as parents we will probably not be in school for a while, so we might not get the opportunity to actually see them. So Catherine, who is hiding in the background, is going to read out some questions that we've got through, and it's great because we've already got some comments and questions for you. Normally we need to kind of try and encourage you to ask them. So Catherine, feel free to start firing away.
Okay, I'm just coming on. I'm just going in to get them. I started trying to write them into the notebook, but I think it's better I just go in and read them as they are. So the first question, I think this is a question for Gerry, and it's a question from Brian Scott. The DYW post in every school, will this include ASN schools?
So yes, what we've got basically is funding for 0.5 post in every school, and we've then got funding for 0.5 for ASN. We've been talking to our ASN schools about where they would be best placed, in other words, young people who are closest to the labour market. So we currently will, come April, we'll have 2 dedicated people to share between 4 of our schools, and we've got 2 headquarters staff who already support our schools, our ASN schools, with developing World of Work. We've got 1 in my team who supports with work experience for ASN young people, and a second one who supports with other employability activity, including things like the Enterprise Academy in Park Hill Secondary. So yes, some of that funding is for ASN as well as mainstream schools.
Okay, I'm going to take the questions out of order because I think the next one flows quite well, and it's a question from Marianne Scobie. There needs to be a lot of work and support to make sure that we can offer work experience opportunities that are accessible and inclusive for young disabled people. Too often disabled pupils are offered very limited options which neither meet their hopes, dreams and aspirations nor their academic abilities. Perhaps some more efforts need to be made to educate employers and schools in terms of what support options exist for disabled employees, e.g. the Access to Work scheme.
Yes, absolutely. And a couple of things about that. We don't want any young person to be limited by anything. So, you know, whether that's, I mentioned gender, I mentioned, you know, colour and race and disability and additional support needs and all of those things. But there should be no reason why a young person can't have ambition and can't achieve an ambition. Part of the Young Persons Guarantee, which I'm now involved in delivering for the city, is a support for young people with protected characteristics and working with employers and with the voluntary sector around volunteering opportunity as well, and trying to target make sure that volunteering opportunity is open to young people with disability of a range of ways, working with organisations which A, will give them the opportunity, B, understand their disability, and C, will employ them with support. So you're absolutely right. it's a growth area for us. It's an area we need to keep focusing on. But I think probably people are more focused on it now than they have been in my time in education, which is fantastic. And certainly as part of Towards Better Futures, that's exactly what we're focused on. It's every single young person, regardless of circumstances and some of the challenges presented by disability. So I couldn't agree with you more.
There's another point that Marianne has added to that, saying in line with the above, we also need to make sure that young disabled people can have the chance to meet disabled people who are working, including people with higher support needs. So making links with disabled people's organisations, such as some of those that you've mentioned, like Glasgow Disability Alliance and Glasgow Centre for Inclusive Living, would enable disabled role models to speak to pupils. Often as disabled people, we are not seen as role models to young people. Some of us have great jobs and lots to offer in terms of experience and inspiration. So I think that's a really positive point to maybe conclude, you know, the questions in that section. I don't know if you want to add anything else to that, Gerry, before I move on.
I think that's fantastic, and you're absolutely right. And certainly some of the research does say that young people, that whole role modelling thing, young people want to see role models who are like them. So we need to get as wide a range of role models as we possibly can, and young people with disability is absolutely part of that. So if Marianne can help us with that and help us do that better, then as well as asking questions, you also get the chance to sign up and do some work for us. So if you want to help us, Marianne, that would be fantastic.
Okay, I'm going back to the second question that was asked, and this is from M. McCarran. How can my children get into the summer school that you spoke about?
Is that the university summer school, I'm assuming? So the university summer school is offered to young people as part of widening access. You should just need to ask your secondary school about it. The details always come from Strathclyde, and they send the details to the schools, and the schools should then pass that on to young people who are interested. I'm not sure what summer school looks like in COVID. I know what it looked like pre-COVID, but your secondary school is absolutely the place where you should get that information. I'm going to leave a kind of open invitation that says, if ever you go to your secondary school and you don't get that information, or you don't get the information I said you would, come to me and I'll get it for you. Or I'll get Jane to get it for you.
Okay, another question for you, Gerry, from Brian Scott. Are the targets for 100% positive destinations about the first post-school destination only? What about post-FE destinations, for example?
Well, one of the really interesting things, Brian, was that when I started in this job, I was fascinated by all the different landscapes. And I kind of came to a position which was, if you try to do everything, then to some extent you end up doing nothing well. So our focus as education services in the first instance is in school leavers. And for school leavers, that's about that initial destination. We are working very closely with our colleges in terms of retention at college and continuing young people into destinations for that. And certainly Young Persons Guarantees working with colleges for the next part. In terms of university, that's not something we're engaged with, in the sense that it's really down to universities, once we get young people in there, to keep them there. And they're much more focused on that than they probably were 5 years ago. And B, to provide good career advice about what you're going to do when you leave. I always thought there was a bit of challenge that in there when I was in school, and I believe it is still a challenge, that too often young people who are saying, I want to go to university, are not then asked, brilliant, what are you going to do after university? And I think that's got to be an important part of the discussion. But our target is about school leavers, because that's really the one that I can impact on directly, although I've got fantastic partnerships with the universities around widening access.
Okay, we'll give you a break for a minute, Gerry. There's a question for Jane next. And this is about the posters on the No Wrong Career Path, Jane. Are any disabled people featured?
That's something we're working with Skills Development Scotland on, because we'd only started that project when I came into post, and obviously we've not been working on that. So there aren't just now, but that's something we're working with them on, because they also don't cover all the range of different roles. So we worked very closely with the Equalities Officer last year to ensure that we had a range of different ethnic groups, because they're not well represented in education. For the numbers of different children that live in our city, we don't have very many teachers who represent our diverse population. So that's been something we've worked on, but that's certainly something that we can go back to Skills Development Scotland on. And their marketing department have been superb. They've basically put anything that we've asked for in the posters. So that's a definite. And if anybody, as Gerry said, anybody out there knows of anybody or is who is, working and would be willing to be a poster girl or a poster boy, then please contact me. I would be delighted, and we would love to get that out there, and who would like to engage on what skills they use and what rewards their job brings. So please contact me if you know of anyone, or if there's anybody out there, because that would be really positive. And we are working together with Skills Development Scotland to make sure we get another range of posters. There only are 10 or 12, but when Gerry was talking there about going beyond university, My World of Work website is fantastic for that kind of information. So as Gerry said, people say, I want to go to university, but what are you actually going to university for? What do you want to do after you've been to university? So there's really good information, but that's a great one about the posters. Please contact me if you know anybody that would like to become a poster boy or poster girl. That would be really good. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. I don't know who the next one, I don't know who wants to pick this one up. Given the technological age that we live in, how many discussions focus on careers in technology? So as an example, do you have lessons that focus on cybersecurity as an example?
So I can give an overview of that, and I don't know if Jane wants to talk about the primary sector. So yes, and one of the things which we're developing as part of our Towards Better Future strategy is something called Glasgow Code Learning, and it's a partnership with Glasgow Life, and it's a whole programme on cybersecurity, coding, and games designs in there as well. We now have a whole new suite of qualifications called National Progression Awards, and National Progression Awards are all in vocationally focused areas. You can get the equivalent of a hire now in cybersecurity. You can get an equivalent of a hire in coding, in ethical hacking, in games design, and more of our schools are now starting to look at those qualifications as part of their offer. So absolutely. And the CodeWorks Glasgow, the Glasgow Code Learning, which used to be called CodeWorks, as part of the programme, young people will work with the digital sector, with employers from the digital sector, and get a chance to go and visit. So yes, absolutely. And I was in discussion with Dell and with CGI, who are our own IT providers, about providing bridges to employment for us, so that because that's a real growth area. The challenge of the digital sector, though, is most of the employment opportunities graduate. Most of it that we came across was graduate. So it's about supporting young people into the right courses, but it's all happening in that space. And it's really quite exciting because it is such a growth area.
Okay, thanks, Gerry. I think there's one final question. What is the best way for small local businesses to get involved, to make others aware that young people are accepted for work experiences, volunteering and/or internships? Who should be contacted?
Me is the answer to that question. Contact me. If you've got a local school, contact your local school. But actually, in terms of the city, if you contact myself, we do have a colleague who's got responsibility for work experience, who's Gary Conde. But if you contact me in the first instance, and I did a lot of work when I was in school with the Federation of Small Businesses, and I'll share a really interesting fact with you. If you don't find it interesting, I'm sorry about that. It was just I did. I just thought it was dead interesting. They asked lots of small businesses who were not involved with schools, why are you not involved with schools? Which is not a very interesting question. The answer was dead interesting. I'm not involved with schools because they never asked me. And I thought that was the best answer in the world, so I went out and asked all of them. So if you've got a small business, you would like to be involved, your school is probably the easiest because it's in your local community. But if you just want a starter for 10, you've got my details on the presentation. Drop me an email and that starts a conversation, and we want as many as we possibly can involved.
Okay, thank you. And another one's just come in. I thought we were at the final comment, but there's another question has just come in. Another, where do we find out where these alternative hires are on offer? So I think that's one for you again, Gerry.
Yep. So there's two ways you can do that. Again, I'm going to put it on your schools, so your school should be sharing that. But if you go into the Scottish Credit and Qualifications Framework, that they've got their own website, and all of the available qualifications Scotland are on that website. You can also go into the Scottish Qualifications Authority website, and again, you will get information about those qualifications there. But your school is the best source for that, and the head of senior phase should be the person that can give you that information. But if you want to go and get it for yourself, SQA website, SCQF website, and I'm sure through Leanne, I could make sure that the direct links to them are shared, so to make it as easy as we can for you.